Donald Trump and the other defendants were ordered to pay $463.9 million. That represents $363.9 million in disgorgement, plus $100 million in interest, which will continue to increase every single day.
A crooked New York State judge just ruled that I have to pay a fine of $355 million for having built a perfect company. And Letitia James, that's another case altogether. She's a horribly corrupt Attorney General, and it's all having to do with election interference.
Today, we are holding Donald Trump accountable. We are holding him accountable for lying, cheating, and a lack of contrition, and for flouting the rules that all of us must play by.
And they're using this as weaponization against a political opponent who's up a lot in the polls and always will be, because I'm competing with a man who can't put two sentences together, who doesn't know what he's doing. And we're heading into a third world war because of this guy.
A New York State appeals court has overturned a $464 million, that is nearly $500 million, civil penalty once imposed on U.S. President Donald Trump. The ruling came after a judge found Trump had inflated the value of his properties to benefit his family business empire. This marks a significant setback for New York Attorney General Letitia James, who filed the civil fraud case back in 2022. The five-judge panel was split, with some agreeing Trump was liable, but ruling the massive fine unconstitutional. Others said the case deserved a new trial, arguing the judge wrongly declared Trump guilty before the proceedings began. One judge even believed the lawsuit should have been dismissed entirely, highlighting how divided the panel really was. The original judgment followed a 3-month trial led by Justice Arthur Engoron in Manhattan earlier this year. Engoron had accused Trump of exaggerating his wealth for years to mislead banks and insurers into offering better deals. In February, Trump was ordered to pay $454 million plus interest, with most of that liability falling directly on him. Trump was personally liable for nearly 98% of the judgment, with his eldest sons, Donald Trump Jr. and Eric Trump, and former Trump Organization Chief Financial Officer Alan Weisselberg responsible for the remainder. Engoron also barred Trump from applying for loans in New York for 3 years and restricted his sons from running the business for 2 years. Those bans have been put on hold by the appeals court, though a court-appointed monitor still oversees the Trump Organization.
Thrown out President Trump's $500 million New York civil fraud penalty. That was prosecuted by Letitia James last year.
Yeah.
The appeals court says it was, quote, excessive. What is your reaction?
Letitia James is another one that belongs in jail. Look, the Democrats, they really overplayed their hand on this because they thought they could take Donald Trump out. They didn't. And in the process, they totally destroyed American people's faith in our Justice Department. And they got him got President Trump a lot of votes because of that. I mean, the book I wrote about that, I went to prison so you won't have to, the whole theme of that thing is that I'm the wake-up call. If they can come for me, they can come for you. So people need to understand that these are bad people. Letitia James, Fani Willis in Georgia, Alvin Bragg in Manhattan. The question is, how coordinated were they? And that's a question that needs to be answered by an investigation. Eamon?
On the EU, real quick.
We'll get to that. Let me just finish it because it's a really important story. I will give you what you need. Yeah.
On the EU, sir?
Anybody? One last lawfare? Okay, let's go.
On the EU.
Quickly about European.
Yeah. Let's do the European. So let me just say a few words on the European Union deal because. In many ways, I can think of no deal more important than with the European Union. I mean, it is, after all, one of the largest entities in the world. It's so important, not just economically, but strategically. But for many, many years, it has been taking unfair advantage of the United States, consistently higher tariffs, consistently higher non-tariff barriers. And even when we have gone to the World Trade Organization and won on things like agricultural cases, the EU has refused to cooperate. And so we've been in a situation where Germany sells us 7 cars for every one we sell them. We have a massive trade deficit with the EU. The trade deficit itself writ large is a great threat to our national security and economic security, and it's an emergency that we're dealing with. So this is like a really important mountain to climb, and we climbed that. And President Trump got up to the top of the mountain today. So let me, for those of you who haven't read the news yet, I mean, look, think about this. We get Europe reducing all their tariffs to 0. We continue our global tariff to fight the trade deficit at 15%. Wow. Secondly, we will impose 15% tariffs on autos. It's a drop from the 25, but remember, before President Trump took office, the tariff was 2.5% compared to 10 in Europe. So that's a great win. We maintain completely our tariffs on steel and aluminum without exemptions or exclusions. We're getting $750 billion worth of LNG purchases. We're getting $600 billion of investment here in the U.S. in our strategic sectors that we need to secure our supply chains and make them resilient. And we're getting Europe to buy more of our arms in cooperation with the uplifted NATO effort. I mean, in many ways, the Ukraine situation has been a total wake-up call for Europe. And so we're ushering a completely new and beautiful spirit and environment of cooperation with Europe. And nobody would have imagined the success of this. Anybody who criticizes Trump trade policy, including the courts right now, simply has to look at this magnificent achievement that President Trump has secured, not just for the American people, but for Europe and the security of the world. Okay, I'll stop there. So let's go to Eamon first, and we'll go here, and then we'll go here. Yes, sir.
So today was the joint statement. Do you have a timeline now for how long before we see the binding legal language? That negotiation apparently still.
No, I'll let you talk to.
Weeks, is that months?
That's a Jameson Greer thing, but I have coined that expression in Trump time. We do things as fast as possible without screwing it up. So we're on that. I mean, it's a great deal for both of us. Why would we delay? Okay. Yes, ma'am. You were with
Italian television.
Italian television.
Largest European broadcaster ever. So there is a lot of sectors are out of this accord. I'm thinking steel. I'm thinking aluminum. I am thinking wine, alcohol, and the digital market. Can Europe expect something lower than 50%, 15% for wine, for instance, and alcohol?
I can't speak to that. I can tell you that the experience from the first term with steel and aluminum tariffs is that every time we try to give an exemption or exclusion to one of our allies, they abused it totally. And we learned that it was a slippery slope. So there will be no exemptions, no exclusions for steel and aluminum tariffs. As you may have seen, just this week, we added over 400 new products to the steel and aluminum tariffs. We did that because these tariffs, it's a strategic game on the part of people who try to export to us. What they do is they figure out ways to do it. So what they were doing was shifting downstream into these other products. So they're not going to do that anymore. All right, yes, ma'am. I said I didn't have a comment on that.
Any takeaway from the Fed minutes yesterday on the ongoing dispute over trade, the president's tariffs?
The Fed is, the Federal Reserve is totally out of touch with reality. If you look at the global interest rate spread right now, we're at 4.25 in the interest rate, okay? Europe is more than 200 basis points lower than we are. Japan's 4 times lower. China's 3 times lower. Now, that dog won't hunt for the American people because it creates all sorts of problems here. Just the high interest rates alone are discouraging the mortgage and housing market and the purchase of new cars, and it's very costly because we have increased debt financing, because about 20 to 30% of our debt financing is just pure short-run debt. So that's no good. But there's also currency effects. When you have higher interest rates and they're lowering theirs, the dollar's higher, and that exacerbates the trade deficit we're trying to deal with. So if the Fed's looking at what's going on, we're seeing improvements in inflation. The tariffs are having zero impact on inflation like they did in the first term. And my fear with the Federal Reserve, it's just a partisan game going on. If you look at what you have there, you only have 2 Republicans nominees on there, soon to be a third with Stephen Mirren. But the other 5, it's like, and Jay Powell, he's a Republican, but he's so anti-Trump, it's unsettling.